Hello everyone, welcome to the semi-finals of Grand Prix Utrecht. In the commentary box, Rich Hagen alongside the master himself, Matej Big Z Zatlkai, Pro Tour finalist from Berlin 2008, one of Europe's finest. And here are two more, one with a future ahead of him, one with a considerable MTG pedigree in the past. David Brucker, a former European champion, which by its very nature takes you back to the early 2000s and beyond, up against the #1 seed with Mardu Ballista, Samuel Vuillot. Matej, what can we expect to see in this semi-final?
So while in the past you've seen Mardu decks be based around vehicles and things like veteran motors, which synergize well with vehicles, the Mardu Ballista deck is more focused around, as you see in the title, walking ballista, and it's just very efficient. And it's been a recent innovation that has taken this top 8 with the Storm with 3 players. And I decided Black and Green Constrictor from David Brucker, a little more on the traditional side, so he has those tireless trackers. He also has walking ballistas of his own, but also some gifted Etherborn and other cheap creatures.
So I was talking to David in between his quarters and this semi-final, and he was saying, you know, people forget that he was from a time on the Pro Tour where people tended to play only constructed or only limited Pro Tours. He's played about 20, if he thought it was 21 PTs, 17 of them were limited. He only played 4 constructed PTs lifetime, and he said for this, he just sleeved up a deck on Magic Online, did half a dozen leagues on Thursday, flew here Friday, here he is in the top 8.
Yeah, easy. Like, as they say in football, you might lose form, but you never lose class. Maybe something like that. And David Brucker obviously still has it, like being able to play very well. I actually remember him from back in the day. It's when I started playing competitively, and he was always known for his limited prowess. But if he makes it work in constructed, I certainly won't mind.
Yeah, so he already, of course, has locked in a slot at Pro Tour Nashville, coming up later in the year. Samuel Vuillot the same. So they are playing for honor and glory and trophy and photos and
Pro points.
Pro points. Not to mention some cold hard cash. As you see the board and you see Samuel Vuillot on the left, trying to add to his Thraben Inspector and Scrap Heap Scrounger up against a gifted Etherborn, which turns out to be a really sweet little card.
Yeah, it's a decent card and one that we haven't seen that much in constructed, so I'm very keen to see David Brucker put it to work, and I can already imagine it being very solid alongside a Rish card Pima Renegade, but we don't get to see that because of an unlicensed disintegration. It makes that go away rather fast.
So Vuillot will send in the Scrounger and the Inspector.
So already down to 12. It's so fast.
Right. And Brucker is sitting there so far with just 2 swamps. Now he does have more mana available to him, but how much time is he going to have here?
Probably not that much. I think he's going to go for a tapped land here. Oh, okay, he has a Blooming Marsh. I thought it was a Hissing Quagmire. So that helps a little bit here and stemming the bleeding with a Winding Constrictor.
Yeah, talking of hissing, here is the Winding Constrictor.
Let's see, another Scrounger in Samuel Vuillot's hand, and only a bunch of lands though, but that's the advantage of the Ballista deck. It doesn't actually mind drawing extra lands, because that means that your walking Ballistas are going to be that much stronger later in the game, plus he still has that clue from turn 1, so... Right,
so it's a good little mana sink there off the Inspector.
Yeah, I've been very impressed with Samuel Vuillot's play. He credited his deck to Elliot Bousseau, and both him and Alexander Haber are almost on identical deck lists, and they're both doing really well. I really like the way they constructed their deck, especially together with their sideboard. But I think we'll get to talk about that a little bit later.
For sure. And by we talk, that's where I shut up and pay attention.
Samuel Vuillot seems to have a decent enough hand. But a Fatal Push from David Brucker takes care of his Scrounger for now, but I know he has a replacement in hand. There it is. So now comes the part of the match where David Brucker is going to start to stabilize the board, and it's going to depend on Samuel if he draws some action. Some Planeswalkers, maybe a big Walking Ballista, even though if David Brucker plays the Rishkar here, then the 2 creatures will be massive already. So even the Walking Ballista might not be good enough there.
Question in the chat, Matej. Why did the Marsh, presumably the Blooming Marsh, not enter the battlefield tapped?
No, because as long as if it's your third land, it still comes into play untapped.
Yeah,
If it's the fourth one, it's tapped.
Yeah, the confusing bit is because the word on the card, the number on the card is 2.
Yes.
If you have 2 or fewer other lands.
Other lands, yeah.
Yeah, there you are. I hope that helps.
Yeah. No confusion with the Evolving Wilds, though. It enters the battlefield tapped, and you can sack it to get another land, and but it's also tapped. And that's going to be a forest for David Brucker, but he has to decide if he wants to attack here. And this is the important bit here, because David Brucker can start swinging the race in his favor. He can attack with a Winding Constrictor for 4 and leave that Rishkar. But if he faces a removal spell, something like Unlicensed Disintegration, something like Chandra minus, that would be really, really problematic for David Brucker. But he's going to take the risk here and swing with his Winding Constrictor. He still has a Grasp of Darkness in his hand just in case, so I think he can be a little bit more liberal here with the attacks. But it wasn't an easy decision to make.
Yes, Squirrel, I do. Anyway, moving on. Scrap Heap Scrounger, 3-man Inspector, opposite, counters aplenty on Rishka, Pima Renegade, and Winding Constrictor.
Yeah.
So Vuillot does what the Scrap Heap Scrounger is meant to do, which is basically go in, because it can't block.
Yep, it can't block, but it's attacking into 4/4, so that immediately should ring alarm bells for David Brucker. And if I think he saw the deck lists, because deck lists are available for the top 8 players, I think he strongly should suspect Walking Ballista coming down for 2, meaning that he would be able to finish off the Rishkar, where I think David Brucker would rather keep the creature for now.
So 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, now, so this is an interesting thing. I had Pierre Dajon in after round 15, and we were talking about that moment where on the other side of the table, in this case David Brucker's side, you're watching your opponent tap 4 mana. On that occasion, it was a 2/2 Walking Ballista, and we were talking about that versus a Gideon, and that sometimes the Walking Ballista, which comes down and takes out a 3/1, is actually the lesser of 2 evils, and in some ways you're quite relieved that you're just not seeing a Gideon ally of Zendikar.
Yeah, exactly. The Walking Ballista is a fine card, but it's actually not as effective in these Mardu deck lists as it would seem, because it doesn't have Winding Constrictor, which is just such a powerful card, because it makes it that much easier to power up big Walking Ballistas. David Brucker actually whiffed on a 5th land. He does have a Verger's Gearhulk. He does have a Walking Ballista of his own, as well as a Grasp of Darkness, so he has options here. He can play a Walking Ballista for 2 mana, which would still yield him a 2/2 Ballista. He could also play it for the full 4, get 3 counters thanks to the Constrictor, but he can also play it so that he has mana up for Grasp of Darkness. So lots of big decisions. And then also, once he decides with those, he still wants to attack, I'm sure. It's a bit of a race here.
You've obviously seen a lot more Magic on screen than I have, because I generally see just 1 match per round, and you get the best, hopefully, of several. But anecdotally, it seems to me like the black-green decks have not had their run of being able to do lots of dice on lots of permanents. I haven't seen many board states of like this 2 and 2, and now here comes a Gearhulk and spread the counters around and it's twice as many, and it's make another Gearhulk and here they go again. Is it more of an uphill struggle for black-green at this tournament? Is Standard moving again just to make it more of a struggle?
I mean, we've seen 3 black-green decks make the top 8, and there were plenty more and around the top table. So I wouldn't quite say that. Look at this. I want to see this. Look, David Brucker paid the Walking Ballista for 2, got some counters, and now the way he played it, I assume he let the damage resolve. So I think Sam Vuillot will only get 1 ping in.
Right.
But it depends on how he played it. If David Brucker went like, okay, ping it twice rather than let the damage resolve with each activated ability and something different. So we'll see based on the live totals how he played it. If he's going to fall down to 8 or 7. But yeah, I would say the black-green Constrictor decks are still very present, but I think the Mardu Ballista decks have done a good job of containing in the regard that the Ballista decks are really good in putting down a lot of very threatening permanents a turn sooner compared to the black-green decks, because Chandra, Gideon, and even Walking Ballista for 2, they're just 1 mana cheaper than Verger's Gearhulk or a Sky Sovereign that we see in David's deck.
Yeah, and it was a little surprising to find that 5 mana was a slot where you had plenty of time, and it was for a while we were very much in Verdurous Gearhulk land.
Yeah. So now there's another grasp for David, but he can only play one of the two. He still hasn't found a 5th land to play the Verdurous Gearhulk, which would have been great here. He has to be very careful about what he wants to do. Oh, okay,
No,
but
so-
of course Rishkar gives you mana.
Yeah.
Whew. I keep forgetting about that. The secondary ability seems so irrelevant, but exactly for spots like these, it helps you accelerate, and you can play them on turn 4, even though this is a bit later. Ugh, that's a lot of counters. Now he can safely attack, I would say, even though he has to be careful about something blowing up his Verdurous Gearhulk, something like an Unlicensed Disintegration. That's been the story of my weekend with
Okay.
Tim. It felt like, does Mardu have an Unlicensed Disintegration in their hand? They
Right.
almost always did.
Yeah.
And it was always brutal.
And part of the reason they always seem to have that in hand is that a lot of the time the game is continuing on the battlefield with not that many cards necessarily being deployed.
Yep.
You get a bit of Chandra Torch Defiance. Oh, I'm just going to reveal the top card and shoot you for 2, fine. And I'm going to have a Gideon maybe and make a knight. And sometimes we've seen Nahiri and,
Sure,
and
yeah.
there's a lot of stuff going on where the Mardu deck doesn't actually have to spend cards to potentially get ahead.
And look at that. Scrappy Scrounger comes back, and while Samuel Vuillot might not have an Unlicensed Disintegration just yet, this is the exact spot where it would be absolutely brutal. Oh, and I think he has it.
Oh.
Of course. What did I just say? They always have it?
He does.
They always have it. And take 3
Wow.
and just take a million more.
That is game shot to Samuel Vuillot with Mardu Ballista. Mardu Disintegration, more like 1-0 to Samuel. And David Brucker will have to win games 2 and 3 if he's to advance to the Grand Prix final, a mere 15 years after being a European champion.
Yeah, look at that. A fist pump from Alexander Haber. He's a friend of Samuel. They're playing an almost identical deck list. And I'm pretty sure his pet Jojo is also happy about that.
Is that the name?
Yeah,
Jojo.
we specifically asked.
Fair. Yeah, he's been, and Jojo has been coming along to Grand Prix forever with Alexandra. we often see him near the top tables, but yep, that's for real. So in the other match, and as you can see, both matches are currently into sideboard action. And if you're wondering, and have not been with us before, so the deal is, in constructed GPs, the players get their opponent's deck list from the start of the match. So there's no advantage for scouting or seeing what your friends have watched, or whether you've got a friend in round 15 watching what your possible quarter-final opponent is playing, how they sideboard. None of that. You get to just look at their full list. So that's something, a sort of unique thing that happens at the top 8 level. So Fabrizio Campanino, he's Mardu Ballista as well. Just taking a look at those two.
Yeah, I'm interested to see their differences, especially in the sideboard. And I think it's pretty clear that the French deck, so Haber and Vuillot, they have their sideboard plan consists of some oaths, and by some I mean 6. They have 3 Oath of Liliana, 3 Oath of Chandra, which is not that common. They also have Nahiris and Obnixilis. So in these sorts of matchups, it's a card they can bring in. And just start playing it slower.
Right, yeah. Now, we saw, this is again with Pierre Dajon heading into the top 8, when we were watching Alexandre Habert up against Tom Law of England. We found that he brought in, and this is against a Mardu match, but Oath of Liliana and Oath of Chandra, and just to watch, it was kind of cool, because it's all very well knowing what the words on the card say, but it was kind of cool to see that really happen, because Oath of Chandra came down, killed something, Oath of Liliana came down, and then he started making planeswalkers.
Yeah.
And it was like, hey, I've got 3 things happening right now. It's not just my planeswalker. It's Oath of Liliana going, here, have a zombie. It's Oath of Chandra going again. It was brutal.
Yeah. But Fabrizio Campanino has a bit of a different plan. He also has a Gideon, and I also see an Obnixilis. But he also has cards like Kalitas, and his main plan against a lot of these decks could be Fumigate.
Right.
To combat Black-Green. I mean, I don't think he's going to board it in a mirror match of Mardu, especially. He will expect his opponent to board in a lot of Planeswalkers, which makes the Fumigates that much worse.
Yep.
But of course, he has another land as well, and he's going to bring in his own planeswalker, just to try to fight on this level. And the main difference in the main deck is the fact that Fabrizio Company actually is running Aether Sphere Harvesters, which the French versions are not. And the Harvester is actually really good because the crew is very cheap and it can attack the planeswalkers very effectively.
Right, yes. Unless, of course, there's a Heart of Kieran on the other side. That's the one. That's the one potential blocker.
Sure, but this is another thing we can point out. Heart of Kieran is actually one of the cards that is being sideboarded out quite often.
Oh, okay.
Because you need to make room for the planeswalkers somehow. And it's hard to keep creature on the board for bits. So, and it's really bad to draw 2. Even though like the removal traits here and there, but I don't think I've seen many Heart of Kierans in post-sideboard games.
Ah, interesting. Oh, that's really cool. Thank you for that.
Well, I'm learning myself when I see them play. It's interesting to see because it seems to me that from learning from Elliot Bousseau and testing a lot of the deck, they figured out the way they want to sideboard in these common matchups. So maybe we get to see some more of the French Mardu Ballista deck in the finals or in the other semis if there's time. So. Yeah, I'm curious to see what their plan is.
So we're heading towards game number 2 in Sam Vuillot against David Brucker. And remember, all 4 of these players are now qualified for the Pro Tour in Nashville. I'm going to head off and see Pro Tour Armonquette. Of course, we've seen some news about that in the last 10 days or so. Hopefully some of you have seen the packaging. And I think I saw somewhere for an upcoming GP, a really gorgeous playmat.
Oh, it's actually for RPTQs, I think.
Is it? Oh, okay.
Yeah, like the big pyramid, and there was a person in front.
I think, yeah, it could be that. Yeah, so it was starting to trickle out the bits of information about Armonquette. Looking forward to that Pro Tour, as always. The third of 4 in our 2016-17 Pro season. So we're in business. David Brucker takes a look. We see a Walking Ballista, a Verdurous Gear Hulk over there on the right, a couple of land, and Sam Vuillot looks like Brucker's going to keep, and Sam Vuillot now having a think.
First he has to clean his cards.
Yes, indeed.
It's important. Well, both players keeping 7. I like to see that. A nice and fair game.
All right, so let's rock and roll. Both players with entering the battlefield tapped lands. Keep an eye on that Needle Spires on the left for Sam Vuillot, because at some point, a long way down the line, that might turn into something more than a mana producer.
Oh, yeah. We've seen it do nasty stuff with Gideon Emblems. As a 3/2 double striker, it's already getting better. It can always crew up some vehicle here and there as well. So yeah, it's been pretty good.
Your Destro asks in chat, anybody know what the decks are in the semis? We do. It's 3 Mardu Ballista decks and 1 Black-Green Constrictor, one of which you're looking at on the right-hand side of your screen, with the curly-haired one, David Brucker.
Yeah, our only hope to save us from the Mardu menace.
The Mardu Mirror Menace.
Yeah, true. Funnily enough, there's a total of 16 Walking Ballistas in the semifinals.
Oh, wow. Huh. Okay.
Yeah, that card's pretty good.
Yeah. So there is Brucker.
With all the hissing quagmires.
Yeah. And he's going to reach out. Is that Natural Obsolescence, I assume? For Walking Ballista.
That's a decent enough target. I mean, he doesn't have anything better to do with his mana, really. He can set up for Walking Ballista of his own on the following turn. And I see Gideon on Samuel Vuillot's hand alongside an Oath of Chandra as well. See how he can develop his mana, though.
I was going to say that the actual just look of the board in terms of mana availability isn't that special for him at the moment.
Okay, so his own Walking Ballista. Another one.
So Brucker draws.
I mean, Brucker has some good follow-up turns here. I think he has a Walking Ballista in his hand, and he has 2 Verdurous Gear Hulks. So if he can stick a creature, then those creatures are going to become huge. And I think he has Gonti, Lord of Luxury.
I love that card so much.
Of course you do.
What's that supposed to mean?
I mean, I imagine limited your decks are not very good, so you prefer stealing something from your opponent's deck.
Oh my god.
I've seen your stream, Rich. I've seen your stream.
Oh. Okay, I'm just going to pop my headphones off for a moment while I just quietly die from the sick daggers from my right.
I mean, you know, I have to. Someone has to take Simon's torch over here. You know, we know he likes to dagger you, and I.
You know we're live, right?
Yeah.
Just checking.
That makes it that much better.
Fair.
All right, but Gonti found a good card. We couldn't quite see what it was yet, but let's see if Samuel Vuillot has something to follow it up with. Okay, just the Thraben Inspector. That's a little bit of uninspiring, especially in the face of that Gonti. But Oath of Chandra can take care of that Gonti Lord of Luxury. Remember, you can still cast that card.
Mm-hmm.
Did Chad like it? Tell me, Rich. Did Chad like the burn?
Of course they liked the burn. Love it.
Love you, Twitch.
You're a terrible person. So, back to the action. Oath of Chandra, Walking Ballista at 1, Thraben Inspector plus Clue versus currently nothing.
Well, that's going to change very shortly. You can see that hand is looking very appetizing. Walking Ballista and 2 Verger's Gearhulks. Unfortunately for David, the face down card is land. Of all 4 were lands. We had some eyes on the floor. So
when you're like he put a good card under there, and someone in chat asked, "Well, how do you know if you didn't see the card?" It's our little secret, little tech secret. We've got people on the floor feeding us information. Yeah,
I'm wondering at this point if David maybe wants to just start jamming Verger's Gearhulks, but no, he's gonna go for the Walking Ballista and a tapped land, just to get it out of the way. It's a Blooming Marsh.
The thing is, I know he's at 18, and yes, there's only 2 power on the board, but I suppose the thing is, if you've got the Verger's Gearhulks, you really do want maximum value out of them.
True.
See, I guess I'd have been quite happy just going, here's a Verger's Gear, try and make a Verger's Gearhulk as soon as humanly possible, and never mind spreading the counters, here's my 8/8 Trampler.
The thing is, with the Walking Ballista on the board, putting the counters on the Ballista itself is just so much better. And in this regard, if David Brucker plays this way, it forces now Samuel Vuillot to react to the Walking Ballista, rather than maybe if that was Verger's Gearhulk, Samuel Vuillot could just play something else and just prevent David Brucker from doing something with the Gearhulk, like an unlicensed disintegration. Whereas the Ballista is not something you really wanna kill, and it's already presenting some relevant action to the board here. So we'll see how it turns out in the end, because these sorts of plays, it's really hard to judge them in a vacuum, because it really depends so much on what the other player has in their hands.
Sure.
One play could be better against one type of card, another one could be good against the other one.
So 4 cards in hand for Brucker.
And 2 of them are Verger's Gearhulks. Yeah, so for example, here comes the point where David Brucker can play the Gearhulk and start targeting the Walking Ballista with some of them, but there's a case to be made that if Samuel has removal for that, and all the counters will get wasted.
Yep.
Things like that, so very careful. And playing the Gearhulk into so many open mana, it just is very risky.
So again, for those of you who don't know David Brucker, he's been around since the very early part of the game, took an extended holiday away, as many of us do, for real-life purposes, but just starting to play again, and as he says, well, I thought I'd see whether I might be good enough to get back on the Pro Tour. Well, basically has at the first try. Just a great performance. But it is at moments like this, Matej, where you wonder whether, not having played 100 games of Standard on Magic Online, but more like 15, there could be a cost to that. He's a very thoughtful and careful player, but there are times where just iteration gets the job done. His Fatal Push for the Walking Ballista is going to be a response of 1 and a response and a response. So now his Verger's Gearhulk about to resolve, and the 3 counters go on there. So it's a 7/7 Trampler against a 1/2 that had a clue.
Yeah, I like it. I like that David Brucker didn't just go all in on the Walking Ballista. He was expecting some shenanigans, but now Samuel Vuillot really wants to draw a land. He has an Ob Nixilis Reignited in his hand, which means that if he draws an untapped source, he found to release the Gremlins. That's another card that deals with the Verger's Gearhulk. See, but I think he would rather land the Ob Nixilis. He drew a Swamp here.
Big moment.
Let's see. Of course, he can also protect his Ob Nixilis with that Thraben Inspector from those hissing quagmires.
Wow.
But he can also go for the Release the Gremlins. Both are really good options. We've seen Release the Gremlins do a lot of work this weekend.
So the more I watch this match, and again, I haven't seen this matchup a great deal this weekend. You have a lot more. The more I'm interested in the edges of the value around things, like whether you're casting Unlicensed Disintegration when you're not going to get the bonus from it, when you cast Walking Ballista for just 1 rather than waiting for 2 or maybe 3, when you've got to release the Gremlins with 1 target rather than hoping that you're going to find 2. That to me seems to be some of the decision points that are interesting. I suppose they all have a theme of being greedy in some ways,
Of
right?
course, yeah. It would seem if you watch the matchup on the surface and you just turn and you don't really pay that much attention, you would think like, oh, this is Battlecruiser magic. Boom, Sky Sovereign, boom, Verger's Gearhawk, boom, Unlicensed Disintegration, Chandras, da-da-da. But it's actually a lot of the nuance in the early turns is about creating the opening to do something like this. And I think Samuel Vuillot just piloted very effectively into a stage where now, for example, David Brucker is forced to play the Verger's Gearhawk, put all counters on it, and he can slam the Ob Nixilis because he has the initiative. He kept the board empty, and now he has some guys to keep back to protect himself from the hissing quagmires. And Ob Nixilis will start taking over the game very soon, and I think we're just not that far off of seeing Samuel Vuillot in the finals.
Yep. I mean, that's starting to get... again, only 3 power on the board right now.
Yeah.
little Goblin. And remember that Thraben Inspector that was there at the beginning?
Yeah.
It's going to be taking notes the whole game at this rate.
It was relevant. It was there to create a blocker, potential blocker. It created the clue that enabled Sam Vuillot to draw the land at the right time. It was just perfect. And just a Winding Constrictor now from David. And look at the Sam Vuillot's hand is stacked. He still has Gideon and drew another.
And Gideon.
Yeah. Ugh. And Vuillot can easily plus Ob Nixilis, maybe even play another one.
Recycle Toad in the chat is the first person to officially declare this game over.
Oh, okay. Thank you for that, Recycle Toad.
So it's good to know.
Yeah, definitely.
And Vuillot at 18, Brooker at 14, but he's down to 1 card. And again, just look at all the things that Vuillot's deck did without using actual cards.
Yeah.
Release the Gremlins, left a Gremlin behind. Thraben Inspector, as you say, left the clue behind.
Auto Chandra killed the creature, but still is dealing damage with Planeswalkers. Now, turn after turn, the advantage is going to mount with these big haymakers. And there's just not much that David Brucker does not really have these big plays now.
Right.
He already spent his 2 Verger's Gearhawks.
I'm going to say, I mean, how much bigger do you want? If you can't get it done with 16 power across 2 turns, you know, then you have to hold your hand up and just go, yep, that's fair. Your deck's really good. It's worked out fine. Yeah,
David Brucker drew a good card for this matchup, a Ruinous Path. That can destroy a Planeswalker. It's a card that hasn't been very much in favor because it's not that great against Mardu vehicles. It is a little better against this particular version of Mardu Ballista just because they have more Planeswalkers.
Right.
But David Brucker was saving the Evolving Wilds. I think he was saving those Evolving Wilds for a while in case you drew a Tireless Tracker, but now it means he can't awaken a land because he's going to be 1 short. Bit of a shame here, but at least he'll get rid of the Ob Nixilis. But the Gideon's still there.
And just a Winding Constrictor. And although many snakes are poisonous, this one does not have Death Touch.
No, Samuel has so many Gideons in his hand. And drew an Unlicensed Disintegration too. Alright, let's see. This is an embarrassment of riches. I mean, the board doesn't seem that big, but Sam Vuillot is like, should I play this, or should I play both? He can start even go, emblem my Gideon, play another Gideon, make it 3/3. Why not?
To be fair, you saying my limited game was shocking was an embarrassment of riches.
Fair enough. At least someone laughed there.
Rashad
in
liked
our
it.
studio, yeah.
All right, Gideon at 5. We're only talking like this because Recycle Toad told us the game was over.
Oh, okay. I forgot.
In all seriousness, is there any way back? for Brucker. Let's stack his deck entirely. No, never mind. Never mind.
Nice try though. And this is the thing where creatures can be answered pretty easily with Obnixilis with Disintegration, but Planeswalkers cannot. And yeah, there you have it.
So David Brucker is out. An incredible run. I mean, he must be so thrilled. A limited specialist back in the day, as we say, in the late 90s, early 2000s. He was just about leaving the game in the mid-2000s, 2006, 2007 was the end of his first run. But he is back at the Pro Tour. Great job. Meanwhile, Samuel Vuillot, the number 1 seed, he got to 40 points during the Swiss, 13-1-1. He is through, and he could be facing fellow Frenchman, fellow teammate, fellow deck constructor, as it were, Alexandre Habert. But Fabrizio Campanino has something to say about it. He's 1 up and currently has 2, now 1, release the Gremlin, and is about to add 1, 2, 3, 4 mana for a 2/2 Walking Ballista.
Yeah, Habert has no cards in hand, so he better draw something powerful. You can see he's drawing it slowly here, but it's only Mountain here. And Fabrizio Campanino now a Scrappy Scrounger and a Heart of Kiran will soon follow the attack for 4. And I think we're just about seeing the last couple of turns, which is great because we get to see how it went. But I assume a big Release the Gremlins was played earlier and it just destroyed Habert's board.
Yeah.
Look at that. If Habert can draw maybe Release the Gremlins of his own to destroy 3 artifacts, he does have them.
2 cards, one of them looks to be a land. It's a Thraben Inspector and a land.
So draw.
And then spend the 2 on the clue straight away to see what I can find.
Just more lands. Wanted to release the Gremlins. It doesn't seem like he found it. He's doing the math.
He's like, am I actually dead?
He is actually dead. He can have Fabrizio play it out.
Yeah, because Walking Ballista can kill off the Thraben Inspector.
It doesn't even have to. It can just attack, yeah.
Right, and then Release the Gremlins can crew up the Heart of Kiran. That's 4. The 3/2 comes in.
That's so.
Yeah.
even just add, it's just going to add something else to the board. Oh, it's a Kalidas. Ugh. It's even worse. That can accrue the Heart of Kiran, and he can just swing in with everything else. So no all-French final, it seems.
There it is, and Fabrizio Campanino advances to the final. Alexander Habert and Jojo on the shoulder is done, and just like, right, I've lost. Jojo, you're off. So there we are. That's the story of the semi-finals. Don't go anywhere. Tim Willoughby and Matej Big Z Zappelkai will be right back with you probably about 5 minutes from now with the final of Grand Prix Utrecht.